Well, thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I drove down from Salt Lake. It's an easy drive. I love the scenery, and I love being down here in Cedar City. Thank you very much for having me. Let me ask you a question to get us started. How many of you have ever heard of O.C. Tanner Company? What do you know about us? Call it out. Jewelry. Something about employees? We take care of our employees. Well, those are great. Those are both true, and they're both incomplete, but they're good starts. And so I hope that you enjoy getting to know a little bit more about what a 90-year-old startup looks like. I've chosen that title on purpose because we talked about that a lot inside the walls of our company lately. We want to continue to feel and be a 90-year-old startup. When you think, as a group of young, aspiring entrepreneurs, business people, curious people, whatever it is that brings you here this morning, when you think about entrepreneurial energy and entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur, business in general, what do you think of? How old do you think a startup can be? How old is a startup? How do you define a startup? Anybody? Well, let me just start us off just with a little bit of a reminder. You know, in today's culture, especially business culture, we celebrate and admire, don't we? A lot of these technology and other entrepreneurial companies that started up at some point and were founded by often a college graduate. Drop out even more often, it seems like. You know, you're all here, stay here, don't drop out. The odds are astronomically in your favor if you finish and keep going. So that's not the message. But you think about some of the famous tech startups in my lifetime. Some of them are older than you are by a factor of 2. Microsoft started up by Bill Gates, a college dropout. It's now 42 years old. Apple Computer, you all love their products. It's now 41 years old, started up by a series of college dropouts. There are many, many, many more startups that you don't know about because they didn't make it, started up by college dropouts or college graduates. It's the nature of a startup, if you will. So as even we sit here today, somewhere else, someone else is starting up something else. It's the nature of business and of life. Things are always starting up. And I like to think about O.C. Tanner as a 90-year-old startup because this is our 90th year. Our company began in 1927. And in my opinion, it is still starting up. What's the alternative? What are you doing if you're not starting up? Are you starting down? It's not a pleasant thought, is it? Are you just treading water? How long can you do that? So that's sort of my message today. You're never too old to think like and to be like a startup. And the minute you stop, the minute you start starting down. The other thing I'd like you to feel like is you've chosen and you've got some great energy. Every company, no matter how big they are, no matter how old they are, needs startup energy. Wherever you land in your career, whatever field it is, whether it's in hospital, healthcare administration, whether it's in business, whether it's in education, whether it's in whatever industry, it needs entrepreneurial, startup thinking, energy, and innovation. Some of the oldest companies are the very best at innovation and entrepreneurial energy. So don't dismiss. I say that on behalf of every other old startup. We need that energy, we need you, so don't dismiss that as a possibility. As I mentioned, 2017 is our 90th anniversary, and this is what we look like today. We are a 90-year-old startup. A little more about that in terms of our profile today. We have a client satisfaction rating of 94% plus. Our customers are other enterprises from all industries. We have 6,000 corporate clients. They are in every industry you can imagine. I'll just give you a little rundown. 900 of them are in manufacturing. over 600 in healthcare, 475 in financial services. That includes the likes of Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, American Express, et cetera, et cetera. Consumer goods, over 300 clients. Retail, 225, energy, 200, and over 100 tech companies are our customers, including HP, Apple, many, many others. So 13.5 million users. Those are the employees of our clients. 150 countries, very global. 5.3 million awards. Awards are a big part of our business. 131 clients are in the Fortune 500. 500 of our clients have 5,000 or more employees. The rest have fewer. And we have over 1,000 multinational clients. Our business, we go into customers and we help them to instill cultures of appreciation and recognition into their company. We provide intellectual property expertise. We teach them how to do it right. We help them to understand the true value of the people that work for them in their organizations. And we find ways to design programs around their culture, their company, and infuse into their workplace culture a sense that people are valued, appreciated, recognized for their contributions, and an understanding that without them nothing happens. Let me illustrate that with an example. So how many of you have been part of a fire drill here on campus? All of you, right? What happens when there's a fire drill? Everybody leaves the building, right? Do some of you stay behind, keep working on a project, squirrel away, try hit? No, you got to leave. You should leave. In our place of business, when the fire drill goes off, we're always in the middle of something. It's never convenient. It's an interruption. Nobody likes it. But we leave the building, we have our places we gather, and we wait for the all clear. We have captains at every door. They're responsible to make sure everybody's out and accounted for. We have messaging that takes place on our iPhones so that we know what's happening in case it's not a drill. We have a command team that's available in case there really is an emergency. All those things are in place, and we practice them when we have these drills. Guess what's happening at O.C. Tanner when we have a fire drill? Nothing. Nothing. And the reason why is all of our people are out. No one's in. And if no one's at work, nothing is happening. Nothing's being innovated. No customers are being served. No sales strategies are being developed. No products are being innovated. Nothing is happening. It's an all stop. I hate fire drills. It puts a stop to everything. And it interrupts everything. Got to have them. But that illustrates the value of people in every enterprise. You've got raw materials. You've got strategy. You've got customers. You've got shareholders. But none of that matters unless you've really got a workforce of individuals and people and teams that are going in the right direction. And we help companies to build culture so that can happen. So that's a little bit about O.C. Tanner. 30 of Fortune's best places to work companies use us for their recognition solutions. Are you familiar with the 100 Fortune best places to work? We happen to be one of them. We're so honored to have been ranked number 40 and number 60 the last couple of years in that ranking. I like even better that we are a good place to work for our people than I like having the pennant that says we are. But it's a nice thing, and these are companies that pay attention to their people and do a good job. These are some of the customers we work with, just a small number. This is a picture of Obert Tanner in his youth, and I want to tell you a little about this because it starts, in some ways, right up the road in Parowan, Utah. Obert Tanner was born in 1904, and he went to Germany on an LDS mission where one of his companions said, "Yeah, I would like you to meet my sister," which he eventually did. And this is a picture of that sister a few years later, after she'd been married to Obert for decades. This is Obert and Grace Tanner. Obert was born in 1904 in Farmington, Utah. Grace in 1906 in Parowan, where she grew up. Obert died at age 89, and Grace died at age 98. Both come from large families. Grace is an SUU grad. Obert has 4 degrees. How about that for an entrepreneur? No college dropout there. A degree from University of Utah, another one from the University of Utah, a degree from Stanford. Oh, that's misspelled. Who caught that one? There's no D in Stanford. And another degree from University of Utah. Obert began the business in 1927. He had a job cleaning chimneys in Salt Lake City where they used coal furnaces. The chimney flues would get really dirty. He was cleaning the chimney one day for a fellow that owned a jewelry store who noticed Obert's work ethic and said, I think I'd like to have you come down and work in my shop. Obert went down and became an employee at the jewelry shop where he learned how to make things. After his mission, he decided that he'd been a seminary teacher, and he noticed that when seminary students graduated from their program, they didn't really receive anything to reward them. And he began making seminary pins for them. One thing led to another, and he was in Parowan, and he looked up Grace, and the rest of that is history. Let me tell you a little bit about companies that have been around for a while. How many of you know, let me see this. Do you have any idea how many companies that were started in 1927 are still around today? Anybody want to guess? How many companies were incorporated and began, started up in 1927 that are still in business today? It's fewer than 1%. The lifespan isn't really that great for startups. This is a chart that shows the decline in publicly traded companies. This is according to Bloomberg. Do you know there are half as many publicly traded companies in the U.S. today as at the peak in 1996? So in 1996 there were 7,000, as you can see. Find 1996, 7,322 publicly traded companies in the U.S. In 1996, sounds like a long time ago for you guys. You're probably born about then, some of you. It's not that long. There are now 3,700 as of 2015. Lots of reasons, but the biggest is failure. Not mergers, not acquisitions. The biggest reason there are half as many as 20 years ago is failure. And there weren't that many startups that took their places. I thought that's an interesting chart. Let me show you another one. This shows the average lifetime of the S&P 500. The average lifespan of the S&P 500 companies in 1958, which is when I was born, was 61 years. So if you looked at all of the S&P 500 companies in 1958, the average, they were 61 years old. Pretty old. Today, it's 18 years. A lot younger, a lot shorter lifespan. Why? Some merger, some acquisition, mostly failure. They stopped starting up. They started starting down. Think about that. Here's a really great stat. This one blew me away. Let's see what you think about this. If the current trend continues, as is expected, get this, in 10 years, so in 2027, 10 years, 75% of the S&P 500 will be companies that today we have not yet heard of. In 10 years, the Standard & Poor 500, 75% of them will be companies that today we haven't heard of. Doesn't mean they're not out there. They probably are. They're starting up somewhere by someone doing something. But they're going to be the ones in 10 years from now that we haven't heard of today. I thought that was fascinating. Startup companies evolve. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about evolution of these companies. Back to Obert for a minute. You guys know, you have your own, I'll bet you do, you have your own perception of what it's like to work in a startup. What do you think? Give me some descriptions. What do you think it's like to work in a startup? Anybody? What's your sense? Anybody work in one? Yeah, what's it like? Pardon? Chaotic?
18-hour days.
18-hour days?
Very up and down here. Very high.
Very up and down. God, you sound like you're talking about O.C. Tanner. What else? A lot going on. High energy, a lot of flexibility, freedom, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of hope, a lot of energy, a lot of youthfulness, a lot of skateboards, a lot of foosball machines. What else do you think about a startup? Let me tell you a little bit about our startup. I'm going to read you, because today, you know, we think of startups as having, what, a lot of funding. Where do they get their funding?
Usually from other people.
Usually from other people. Venture capital, VC firms, first round, second round, third round. We read about that. Somebody, pardon?
Out of pocket.
Out of pocket. We call that bootstrapping. You know, there are some 20-year-old startups that you use every day or know a lot about that still haven't turned a profit. They're still operating on funding. Their valuations are enormous, but it's all on the sales growth and the energy that's projected to come. Let me tell you a little bit about our startup. I'm going to read you from a letter that Obert Tanner wrote while he was a professor at Stanford in 1941. He had left Utah to pursue an advanced degree. His partner in the business was Norman Tanner, his nephew. Norman was a heroic World War II fighter pilot. He had left. Norman and Obert were actually skiing together at Alta on December 7th, 1941, when the loudspeakers broadcast the bombing of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. They came down the bottom of the run, got in their cars, went to work. Norman packed his bags, and he was in the reserve, went off to war, flew fighter planes. Obert was there, but he had already made plans to go to Stanford, and he continued with those plans. And they left the business, a small 14-year-old fledgling business, in the hands of one of their early employees, and they only had about 7 of them at the time. His name was Newell Barlow. Listen to this letter. This is the original letter in Obert's handwriting from 1941. March 31st. Newell, in the absence of both Norman and myself, the responsibility of the company is largely in your hands. I believe you can measure up to it. I shall be there again in about 3 weeks, and we'll be glad to dig in again and help out. Best regards, Obert. Newell Barlow was managing a handful of employees at the time, working in a cramped, rented basement of the Capitol Theater in Salt Lake City. Anybody been to Capitol Theater to see a production or a performance? It's got a cramped, tiny little basement down there, big enough for about 20 people to stand around, and that's where the business was housed at the time. So there we were, a 14-year-old startup during World War II. A few months later, in early 1942, another letter from Obert at Stanford to Newell in the basement of the theater. Dear Newell, I have done some hard thinking on this coming payday. Here is my solution. Talk to each man privately and ask if he can get by for a few days. Then give each what he absolutely has to have. I suppose we could afford $5 or $10 each. Talk to Jack, Ace, and all of them. Tell them this is our first request for a payroll delay. Surely they could go along for a short time. No money, no VC, no investor, bootstrap, no money to make payday. How would you like that where you're working? Also, continues Obert, I wouldn't hesitate to raise several. I know it sounds incongruous, but I think we should. That's Obert. That's the founder of our business. That's the philosophy. That's the importance of people. I don't know, but I imagine it was killing him to delay payroll. And at the same time, he wanted to give raises because he valued his people. I wouldn't hesitate to raise several. I know it sounds incongruous, but I think we should. This new defense work may click. I don't know what that's about, but it was wartime. And maybe Obert had some ideas that he could get some defense work. The whole country was doing defense work to support the war effort. And then this. I am also writing the Engelbretsons on the rent, so you shouldn't worry on that. Well, Newell, hold tight like a fighting mariner. We are going to win through. There is a break ahead for us, and we don't need a very big break. We fought some of the early hard battles, and we can certainly win more. Best regards, Obert. A week or two later, the letter from Newell. I've got that one. These are all in the archive. Dear Obert, this payday was a tough one, all right, but we made it. I never feel quite sure about these paydays until a week after they are due. The next ones should be easier as we have a lot of receivables coming in. I don't know how many times that happened, but I know that 2 other times Obert hawked Grace's wedding ring at the pawn shop in order to make payroll. I know that when Norman Tanner's wife, Barbara's father passed away, or a relative, I think it was her father, left her $5,000 in the late 40s, which was a big sum as an inheritance. They invested it in the business. And in return, they were given 35% of the business. So that means the total business must have been worth around $15,000. Pretty good investment Norman made. It paid off handsomely, largely because of Norman's work in the company, along with Obert, not just the investment. Those are startup stories that exist in every enterprise at some point in time. And maybe there's different ways of getting the funding to keep things going, but that's how they happen. I'm going to walk you through quickly 90 years of evolution and change in our startup. And I want you to think a little bit about where you work, where a relative works, where a mom or dad works, where you want to work, an industry you like, if you would, as we walk through this, because I want you to see how things change. We're going to talk about some examples of how things change over 90 years in terms of location and growth, brand marks and logos, strategy and market leadership, and most of all, purpose. So I'm going to go through really quick. First of all, location and growth. This is Obert's mother's basement of that home where the business began in 1927. This is the basement of the Capitol Theater where the business was housed in the 1940s. This is the sign to the left of the O.C. Tanner sign. You can see the advertising sign for the Capitol Theater, whatever was being performed or played by way of a production. This is the first building Obert built that he owned on 1930 South State Street in Salt Lake, right across from the county complex, with the big fountain out front. Obert loved fountains. He donated several. There's one on this campus. This is that building after 20 years in the 1980s, 90s of additions and remodels. There are now 7 buildings on campus. This is our building today. It looks completely different, having gone through a re-skinning and an addition. This is the inside of our building. It looks a little bit different, doesn't it, than the basement of the Capitol Theater? And that room you see is where clients come. We have 1 or 2 clients from all over the world coming each week to spend a day or 2 with us to talk about their recognition and their people and their culture strategies. And we house them in this space for the day or 2. We take tours, we strategize and think, and we bring to bear all of our expertise that's been developed over those 90 years. It evolves. This is our theater. It looks a little bit like this one. I love this room. You can maybe just barely see right there. It says Grace. We have 2 beautiful conference rooms in this new area, a new wing that we just completed about a year ago of our building. This is the Grace conference room. Right across it from it is the Obert. You'll see that in a minute. But that scene, that artwork, was chosen by our founder, Carolyn, who's the daughter of Obert and the current chair of our board. She said to us, I want to be in charge of the art. And she commissioned an artist named Frank Huff to drive down here to Parowan. And if you are heading north on I-15 and you pass the Parowan exit and you look left, you see this mountain range. It was a nod to Grace Tanner, who grew up in Parowan. Right across, there's a little closer view of it. Right across the hall is the Obert room. And these are scenes from Farmington, where Obert grew up. So, yes, in old companies, 90-year-old businesses, there's history, there's legacy, there's culture. It's fantastic. It's nothing to shy away from. Every startup hopes it survives long enough to have something like that in it. This is Tanner Labs. This is in a different building on our campus on purpose. This is where technology innovation takes place. We have a little bit of a hands-off approach. We have a terrific team there of developers and thinkers and innovators and product experts. And they're coming up with new ideas on what our customers can benefit from. Not long ago, and we try to fail early and fail fast on the ones that don't succeed. When one of the products that they bring to market doesn't resonate, we try to kill it quickly. And I like to celebrate that. I think that means that the Tanner Labs has been successful. We take some risks, we make some investments, we try things. Some of them work, most of them don't. It's okay. That's what you do. And you don't do it just when you're a brand new startup, you also do it when you're a 90-year-old startup. Let me talk to you about brand marks and logos. This is our first brand mark. This was on that sign above the Capitol Theater you might have recognized. We were manufacturing jewelers. We'll come back to product in a minute. We evolved over time and became a recognition resource, not just a manufacturing jeweler. We evolved further and we really focused and zeroed in on the recognition experience, the emotion that happens when someone is recognized and acknowledged, or a team is recognized and acknowledged. How many of you can recall right now a time in your life when someone, a teacher, a parent, a coach, said something to you positive that inspired you, that encouraged you? Maybe a signal that, hey, maybe I'm good at this. Someone in authority, someone that's an expert, someone that matters to me, noticed that I wrote a good essay, or I did well on an exam, or I had a good idea, or I hit the baseball well. Whatever it is, you can recall something. And that moment happens in cultures where there's a focus and a celebration on the accomplishments of people and teams. And what happens when you feel that way? You want to do it again. You get engaged. You love where you work. You celebrate your colleagues. You innovate, you create, you develop, you take care of customers. All those things are desperately needed by companies today. Startups of all ages. A little later, we changed that logo again to focus, really zero in on appreciate. Two forms of appreciate. One is saying thank you for a job well done, and the other is what happens to your people over time as you build a culture of appreciation and recognition. They appreciate. They become more valuable. It's a double entendre. And we loved that. We had a lot of fun with that. And now we've moved into a new space where we're really focusing heavily in our efforts on global recognition and global culture inside global businesses, because so many of our companies and customers are international. So, did you see that? I mean, I'm going to go back real quick and just, every one of these stands for something. And every one of them defines an era. And we're going to come back to that in a minute. Products and services is another one. Quick look. Look at this. How much time when do I have to stop?
20 after.
20 after, okay. Products and services. This is a first seminary pin. This was the first seminary pin. We had to go to some great lengths to find it, but we wanted to have it in our archive. That was what Obert began doing, making seminary pins to recognize the achievement of a seminary graduate. He pretty soon figured out that more people than seminary students needed recognition. In fact, if you think about and study the Industrial Revolution and the birth of unionization and other kinds of things that were happening in the 20s, 30s, 40s, you realize there was a desperate need for a philosophy of appreciation and recognition. People were not being, people were considered, and this term's used today and I hate it, they were considered assets. Human capital, I hear that term. I can hardly even say it. Human capital. I don't think of humans as capital. I think of them as people that contribute and come to work and give their very best. And Obert had that vision early on. That's where I learned it. And so that's what brought us out of the seminary. Oh, I didn't show you the pen. There's the pen, sorry. This has the preview slide coming up. I was looking at that one. That's the first seminary pen. Then he got into corporate recognition because A, companies needed to recognize their people, and B, very important for a startup, companies have more money than seminaries. It was a bigger, broader, more lucrative market. This is an early service award pin for someone that was celebrating 5 years of service or 10 years of longevity with Bonanza Airlines. Here's one for Chevron. Chevron had stars to denote how long you'd been there, or a diamond. See that diamond right in the center? Or how about this one? In 1985, Apple became a client of ours, and they loved diamonds. Or how about this one? In 2002, O.C. Tanner was privileged to make the medals for the 2002 Winter Olympic Games. The ultimate form of recognition. How many of us are ever going to get to stand on the podium and receive a gold, silver, or bronze medal? Maybe some of you have. But I bet maybe not in the Olympics, but in some other field of endeavor. And the same thing should and can happen inside of corporate America and around the world where individuals achieve things. Today, our products look more like this. They're more technology-based. We're using all kinds of apps to provide mobile abilities for colleagues to recognize each other, nominate one another, for managers to make sure they're noticing, recognizing, and appreciating. We have e-cards, we have e-buttons, and we have ways of doing all those kinds of things in a mobile way where it happens in real time, immediately. Awards are given sometimes, and sometimes just good messages are given. And it's all part of building a culture of recognition. A lot has changed since 1927. I love this slide. This is a list of competitors that we fight with in our market. I don't know that you'll know any of those names. You might. We are on our third round of competitors since I've been at O.C. Tanner 34 years. Some of them stopped starting up. Some of them took a strategy that led to their demise. Some of them decided to be unprofitable by being the low price leader. Some of them just lost imagination. Today, there are no secrets. Companies that want to do business with someone in our industry go online to see what you're recommending. We can't hide it. If we posted something today, tomorrow it would be on our competitors' websites. It's just how it is. So you've got to move fast, you've got to stay current, and you've got to back it up. You've got to be reputable. You've got to do what you say you do. This is where we are throughout the world today. Lots of different locations, growing and expanding. Client needs change. They change all the time. There's a war for talent. You guys are in a great spot. You're working on your degrees. You're working on skills. You've got great programs here, fantastic instructors and examples and role models. Boy, you have to take advantage of it. Companies are struggling. They're trying to attract, engage, retain good people. Be one of those. Companies want innovation. They need differentiation, success. People today leave companies to find a place where they can innovate. You want to go work someplace where there's nothing new happening? How many want to do that? Do you want to go work for a place where you can't innovate, you can't make changes, you can't speak up, you can't take a risk? No, I don't think you do. There's something different about your generation. And companies know it, and they're feeding off of it. They're desperate for it. Companies need help building a great culture. They don't always know how to do this. Some company that's making dog food might make the very best dog food. They probably don't hire anybody that isn't a dog owner. They shouldn't, in my opinion. That ought to be question number one on the application. What kind of dog do you have? No dog. Pass. Right? Why would you hire someone that doesn't love dogs to make dog food or to sell dog food? Well, that's part of the culture of an organization. Find one where you fit. I did. I am nothing today without the company where I work. I came to work with a couple of degrees. I thought I knew everything. I knew nothing compared to what I've learned. I'm a product of where I've worked. I'm a product of the culture. I'm a little passionate about it. You give me a soapbox, I'll stand on it. I'll take you way past 20 after. I shouldn't do that. These are the platforms that we provide our clients today. I won't go into this great detail, but it's evolved from a seminary pin to a much broader basket of thousands of awards, but the awards are just one part of our offering. We've got mobile apps and social tools, and we have an in-house ad agency, and we have Tanner Labs that's creating and developing, and we have an O.C. Tanner Institute that does the research and writes papers and books. And I'll say a little bit more about this later, but we've got a box of these coming, and if they don't arrive in time, they'll be available. You can pick one up. A New York Times bestseller all about great work. Great work is what happens when you have a culture of people that are engaged, that love what they're doing, that feel like they're part of what's happening in an organization. Great work is what makes customers success. Great work is what keeps companies starting up instead of starting down. It's a fun book. It's full of stories of great work. The invention of the cell phone, and many, many other great stories that will help illustrate that concept. Let me just walk you through this real quick. This is my favorite slide of all time. This describes the strategy evolution of O.C. Tanner. On the far left, in the gray box, from 1927 to 1970, we grew to be $12 million in sales. It took us that long. And we made emblematic awards. We made pins and charms, and they were beautiful, and they still are, and we still make them. And they're fantastic. They're gorgeous. We have craftspeople that make these. We make jewelry. We're proud of it. People love it. I'm wearing one right now. And I wear one on my pajamas because I love where I work. You think I'm kidding, don't you? We added rings and accessories. What's an accessory? Well, you know, we saw people were wearing like 3 and 4 pins over the career. And we thought, well, let's get them a tie bar. Let's get the ladies a necklace and a bracelet. Let's put an emblem on a watch. We made them available in all different kinds of... The business grew. It evolved. It was innovation. We added things besides jewelry. We added clocks and watches, and now we have sporting goods, and we have canoes, and we have furniture, and we have appliances, and we have cookware, and we have every possible thing you could find at a Costco or a Walmart. We have that product line available. We customize them. We do something to make it personal, whether it's an engraving or a note or something symbolic that goes with it, so it's not just a consumer product that loses its meaning after it wears out. 1970 to 2000, we were not doing emblematic awards. We were selling service award programs. So instead of just the award, an entire program, which included training so that managers inside of companies knew what to do when they presented the award. If you're going to get an award, you don't want to just find it in your locker or on your desk. You want your manager to call you over with 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 or 100 colleagues. Say your name right, so it sounds like he actually knows who you are. And then recite some specific things you did over your career or to earn that award. The emotion, the moment, the feeling, the engagement, the loyalty, the bonding. We grew to $285 million in those 30 years. And notice what's happening, 43 years, 30 years. In 2000, we became a provider of recognition solutions. Not just service award programs, but a much broader solution. Every time we went to a new era, the old came with us. Emblematic award era got swallowed up in this bigger one. This era got swallowed up in this bigger one. We grew to 500 million. We're now embarking on our next era. We're still starting up. It's a brand new world. We've got new things to do. We're looking at much more of a culture solution, much more global and international. All of these things we've done over this 90 years, we still do, but we've got to do more. We've got to do it better. Does that help understand sort of the strategy? That's more important than the buildings. That's more important than the logos. That's more important than the products. The evolution of the strategy is what a startup continues to change and evolve over time. This is our strategy map for 2017. I won't go into in detail, other than to say this tells our story on one page. Every employee in our company can find themselves on the map. It tells at the bottom who we are, what's our culture like, what does it feel to work here, what are the core competencies. I read this from the bottom up because it starts with people, not from the top down. At the top, we talk about our mission on one corner, and we talk about what our client outcomes are on the other. What are the jobs clients are hiring us to do? In the middle, we talk about right now, this year, what are the core corporate objectives that we've got to focus on in order to go forward as a startup to the next place. All of our people see this. They cascade it throughout their individual goals and teams. And lastly, I want to tell you, this is one fantastic lady. This is Carolyn Tanner Irish. She's the chair of our board, Obert's daughter. And purpose, passion, and performance. Not long ago, we had a board meeting. We presented to our board, of which she's the chair. It's a professional outside board. Our goals to grow the company as an executive team. We had thought it through. We had planned it. We had had offsite after offsite. It was a great plan. We talked to the board about our growth plans. And at the end of the discussion, Carolyn's answer was, well, that's all fine and good. Love to see you have all those sales goals. You showed us a lot of numbers. But I don't see any numbers in our mission statement. In our mission statement, it says we help companies with their cultures. We help to do this and do that. The numbers will follow. Stick to the knitting. Focus on the purpose. Focus on the passion. The performance is in the difference we make, and the results will come as sales follow naturally. So we have been a startup business for 90 years that has not stuck to one thing and has evolved, as you can see, in many ways. But we have a foundational principle. People matter at work. People matter everywhere, but we focus. People matter at work. If you make dog food, make the very, very best dog food you can. And that's a great purpose too. It's just not ours. I got like 2 minutes. Questions? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Throughout your lecture, it seems like there was a constant theme of pivot. The company's always pivoting.
Yep.
Ready to move on to the next thing. How does management know when it is time to pivot? How do you know you're not pivoting too early? Or
Great question. How do you know when it's time to pivot or evolve? Well, you got to listen. You got to watch the market. You got to actually be ahead of the curve. You got to take some risks. You got to get out ahead and take some chances. We haven't always done that. Sometimes we've been beaten. But you've got to be willing to do that. We use our own company as our petri dish to test things out. Another question I saw? Yeah.
So when you're in the process of researching and discovering what moves to take next, when do you decide what risks to take, which risks are
How do we decide which risks to take, which ones not to take? A couple ways of answering that. One is we do have a group of clients that we go to and talk to about things. We listen to them. We have a summit every year with our 150 biggest clients. We listen and talk to them. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we decide we're going to go there. And our customers are on a spectrum. Some of them are over here, way over here, and they're just wanting to buy stuff to pass out to their employees in hopes that something good will happen. Some are way over here. They get it. They have the aspiration. They know what we're trying to help them accomplish with their culture. And the ones that are over here, we are trying to bring them along. We are trying to set goals for them and help them because we know they'll love it once they get there. So that kind of goes into your question a little bit. I think my time is up. Do I have time for another question or am I done?
no, one more.
One more question. Anybody? Yes, sir.
What was it specific about OC Tanner that made you want to work with them so badly to not get paid?
Why did I choose to go to OC Tanner at the risk of not getting paid? Look, I had 19 or 12, I can't remember. It was a lot of interviews. They weren't hiring me. I went there because I married a Utah girl. I grew up in California. I had job offers after graduate school everywhere but Utah, not everywhere, but several places, but not Utah. She wanted to be in Utah. I asked several people in Salt Lake, who are the best companies? Only one company was on everyone's list, OC Tanner. I didn't know what they did. I wanted to work there. I wormed my way in. Best thing I ever did. Hey, thanks you. It's been great being with you. Thanks, y'all.